Section 3.4, Assignment 2, number 26. So here we have our next problem. So the first thing we want to do is we want to rewrite it just so that it's a little bit clear what we need to actually do to differentiate this function. So 1/2 times x squared, I'm going to just write that as x squared over 2 times, instead of square root of 16 minus x squared, I'm going to write that as 16 minus x squared to the 1/2. So now I can see what I have. I have a product of two factors. On the left-hand side, we have x squared over 2. On the right-hand side, we have 16 minus x squared to the 1/2. So in order to find the derivative of this thing, I need to use the product rule. So let's get started. So according to the product rule, to find the derivative of this, what we need to do is we take the first factor, x squared over 2, times the derivative of the second factor, plus the derivative of the first factor times the second factor. So that's how you set it up. This is the product rule. Now it's just a matter of simplifying things down and cleaning things up. Okay, so let's get started. So the derivative of 16 minus x squared to the 1/2, notice we're going to have to use a chain rule here because we have something to the 1/2 power. So to find the derivative of this, first we take the exponent and we bring it to the front as a coefficient, times 16 minus x squared to the instead of 1/2, we're going to do to the 1/2 minus 1, which is to the negative 1/2. We're not done yet because notice we have something complicated on the inside. So using the chain rule, we know we have to take the derivative of the inside. So the derivative of the inside is 16 minus x squared. To find the derivative of that, let's just do it in parts. So the derivative of 16, that's just 0. That's one of the rules that we learned back in section 3.2. And then the derivative of minus x squared is going to be minus 2x. So the derivative of this entire thing, 16 minus x squared to the 1/2, turns into this entire thing here. 16 minus x squared to the negative 1/2 times negative 2x. The derivative of the outside times the derivative of the inside. Now let's move on to the next part. The derivative of x squared over 2. Well, the derivative of x squared is 2x, and 2x over 2 just leaves me with x. All right, let's combine things and clean this up a bit. So first, let's start off with x squared over 2 times 1/2 times negative 2x. So x squared over 2 times 1/2 is x squared over 4 times negative 2x is going to be negative 2x cubed over 4, which we will be able to reduce. So x squared over 2 times 1/2 times negative 2x is negative 2x cubed over 4. Okay, now let's reduce this. So negative 2/4, that reduces to negative x cubed over 2 times 16 minus x squared to the negative 1/2 plus x times 16 minus x squared to the 1/2. Now what I want to do next is I want to simplify this, and I want to simplify this mainly by getting rid of this negative exponent here. I also don't want to have, because in order for me to get rid of this negative exponent, I'm going to have to multiply by a fraction. I'm going to have to multiply by something over itself. So I'm going to end up with a fraction, and I don't want this 2 here either, because then I'm going to have a complex fraction. So in other words, in order to satisfy all of the things that I just said, not having this 2 in the numerator of the fraction that we're going to end up with and not having a negative exponent, here's what I'm going to multiply by. I'm going to multiply everything by 2 times 16 minus x squared to the positive 1/2 power. Notice, because this is to the minus 1/2, I know I'm going to have to multiply by this to the positive 1/2 over itself. And of course, we have to multiply, we have to actually multiply by this over itself, because essentially this is just multiplying by 1, which does not change our function. So this is going to be the magic factor that we're going to multiply and use to simplify most of this stuff that's in here. So let's see how that works. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to distribute this whole thing into each of these 2 terms. So what's 2 times 16 minus x squared to the 1/2 times this whole thing? Well, this 2 and that 2 cancel out. So I'm going to just be left with x cubed. And this to the 1/2 times this to the negative 1/2. Well, if we use the basic properties of exponents, we know that we're going to add the exponents, and negative 1/2 plus 1/2 is 0. So we're going to end up with 16 minus x squared to the 0, which is just 1. Now let's multiply this whole thing times our second term. So 2 times x, that's just 2x, times 16 minus x squared to the 1/2 times 16 minus x squared to the 1/2. Once again, properties of exponents. We add the exponents. 1/2 plus 1/2 is just 1. So we're just going to end up with 16 minus x squared to the 1. And now, don't forget, we also have this denominator that we have to take into account and multiply into our final expression. Okay, so let's keep going. There's more steps that we can do to simplify the numerator. So negative x cubed times 1, that's just negative x cubed. Here we can distribute. So 2x times 16, that's going to be 32x minus 2x cubed all over 2 times 16 minus x squared to the 1/2. Now we can combine these terms up here. So negative x cubed minus 2x cubed, that's going to be negative 3x cubed plus 32x all over 2 times 16 minus x squared to the 1/2. And we could, if we wanted to, factor out an x from the numerator, since we have a common x. But just for the sake of time, I'm going to stop right there.